Doctor Who, Worst to Best, Season 1. Hello and welcome to this week's video. This week I want to do another one in the Worst to Best series that I started this year. And we're going right back to the very beginning, appropriately enough, for the 60th anniversary year with William Hartnell and Season 1. There are 7 stories in Season 1, so let's go from worst to best. Last place. Well, it's got to be the censor rights, hasn't it? I don't think I'm being particularly iconoclastic or controversial by choosing that as the worst story of Season 1. To be fair, the first episode isn't too bad. It's quite atmospheric and it actually has a pretty eerie cliffhanger. But then it just kind of goes... To be perfectly honest, I've never actually sat through the whole thing. I think this was out here like... Yeah, this was out in Australia in like Christmas 2002. It was in a box set with Gunfighters and Time Meddler, both of which I watched and enjoyed. I tried watching the censor rights. I gave up in episode 2. I tried to spread it out rather than watch it all in one go. I tried watching one episode a day, and I still couldn't get through it. It's that boring. Yeah, it's really not good. And it's definitely the worst of Season 1. 6th place. Now, this might be a little bit more controversial. I don't know. The Keys of Marinus. I pretty much find this akin to the censor rights, to be honest. Interestingly, I know that there are some people who do like this a lot more than the censor rights. Some people really enjoy it. I've never been able to get on board with it. I find it really, really dull. I think I may have seen this or some of it back at like the fan club in Adelaide back in the early 90s. I don't know if I saw all of it or whether I had to leave to come home because it was late. Again, as with the censor rights, I've never been able to sit through the whole thing. It's just so dull, and I find it's just very, very kind of kiddie sci-fi and juvenile and just ugh. I don't like the Keys of Marinus. It's cheap and stupid and just I don't like it. Sorry. Complain if you want to. 5th place, I would say The Edge of Destruction. I don't dislike Edge of Destruction particularly. It's okay. It's just a bit of a filler, isn't it? I mean, it does some important stuff with the characters and the Doctor, Susan, Ian, Barbara finally all learn to trust each other and work together and start to become friends rather than the untrusting strangers of the first 2 stories. But it's a bit of a weak story. The fact that the whole thing is just a technical fault is a bit of a letdown. You're kind of hoping for something a little bit more than that. I don't particularly dislike Edge of Destruction. It's okay. I'll watch it. 4th place. The Aztecs. Again, before anyone starts chucking things at me, I like the Aztecs. I just don't necessarily think it's quite as good as it's made out to be. It's a decent enough story. Just a little bit overrated, I find. And I also find it particularly irritating that it's used by the moron New Who Davis Defender generations. No, the Doctor falls in love. No, he doesn't. What the fuck are you talking about? What story are you watching? He's friends with this woman, and then he feels that he's flattering her because he wants something from her, and then he feels really bad about the fact that he used her. How this somehow justifies Rose fucking Tyler is anybody's guess. But I guess the minds of New Who fans are very, very strange places. I mean, if they didn't have peculiar minds, let's face it, they wouldn't be New Who fans. But there you go. Anyway. What am I on now? Was that 5th place? That was... How many stories are there in season 1? An Earthly Child, Daleks, Edge of Destruction, Marco Polo, Keys of Marinus, Aztec. Oh, there's 8. I thought there were 7. Shit. Well, I'm not redoing the whole bloody video, so that was 5th place. 4th place, I would say An Unearthly Child. I like The Unearthly Child. I like it a bit more than the Aztecs, if only for the first episode, which is obviously iconic. Though I don't think the rest of the story is as boring, as bad as some people think. I find it quite interesting. There's arguably a realistic harshness here that you never see ever again, particularly in modern Who, obviously, which is about as harsh as your average Disney movie. I like it. There's a real sense of, there often is in the Hartnell era, and it starts here, a real sense of people being uprooted from the norm and plunged into a time and a place where they're just completely ill-equipped to deal with it. This is something you almost especially in modern Who, you never get, where any historical setting is basically just 21st century Britain in funny clothes. Half the time they even talk like 21st century Britons. It's so embarrassing and so lazy. So to see something as stark as this, it's very effective. 3rd place, I'm going to give Marco Polo. This might be number 1 if they ever actually found a thing. I have been able to kind of experience Marco Polo. There was a fan-made animation that was out a few years ago. Who Recons, I think was the name of the channel. I don't know if they're still on. Well, I've only seen it once, but and the animation was extremely crude, obviously. But yeah, I really got into the story. I thought it came across as being an excellent story, and I've no doubt that with in live action with the actual actors, sets, and costumes, it would be even better. It's a great shame that we don't have even any of it. So sad. Bloody BBC. 2nd place, I would say The Daleks. Obviously, iconic story. Maybe a little bit too long, especially in the latter stages. But it's very good, very effective. As well as being a little bit too long, I could point out that it's maybe a little bit too bleak at times. Not enough fun. But I really, really like The Daleks. However, my first choice for the season, as best of the season, will probably come as a surprise, though not to those of you who know this season and know what I haven't talked about yet. I'm actually putting as my favourite of the season, The Reign of Terror. I actually really like The Reign of Terror, and it really surprises me because I wasn't that keen when I first saw it. I mean, I think it was one of the very last VHS releases, and obviously it's incomplete, and then we didn't have animation. And at the time, I found it kind of boring, to be honest. I mean, granted, at the time, when was this? The early 2000s. I was kind of off Who a little bit. That may have coloured my perception, but I always kind of struggled with Reign of Terror right up until the 2010s, and I think the last couple of times I've seen it, I just completely turned around on it. I find it really entertaining. It's got the kind of the atmosphere of the Hartnell historicals that you almost never get again. Yet at the same time, there's a little bit more fun to it. It's not quite as dark and grimy and miserable. It's got a little bit more of a sense of humour to it, which makes it more fun. I'm also in a minority of about 3. I actually really like the animation. I find it quite atmospheric and quite suiting to the story's tone. I'd take that style over the Scooby-Doo Hanna-Barbera style that now seems to be the house style of the animated stories, regardless of whether or not it remotely captures the atmosphere. I think the Rain animation at least captures the likenesses and the atmosphere a lot more than the cut price Scooby-Doo stuff we get these days. That's just my opinion. Sorry. So yeah, my favourite story of season 1 is actually The Reign of Terror. Anyway, that's this week's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I will talk to you again soon. Bye for now.